Hi, this is Peter Karsten from STARTRADER, and this is part 2 of the story about the future of jobs. In the previous session, we talked about the uncertainties related to AI that exists right now. We talked about the current state of the art of AI. We talked about Microsoft, how that works in the workplace right now, where that's going to go. We talked about Google Bard. We talked about ChatGPT. And in this session, I'm going to start talking about how that affects how we work. What effect will that actually have on our jobs? Well, we remember from last session that 5 out of 8 people on the planet, 5 billion out of 8 billion people on the planet live in places where we have offices today. I apologize for the advertising. Welcome to STARTRADER. Good. Now let's go into innovation. When you innovate a business process, or if you innovate a new product, a good way of looking at it is to look at what the underlying needs are that people have, break it down, and see how those underlying needs can be addressed using the tools that have come up recently. What is it that we can do now that is different from what we did before? I always think about 3-letter acronyms and 4-letter acronyms, extended 3-letter acronyms, ETLAs, when I think about innovation. I could take a sentence like the IMF FSAP sets out KYC, AML and CTF guidelines. Now, if you are working in the world of finance, then that sentence is plain vanilla. You've heard it all before. International Monetary Fund, know your customer, anti-money laundering, counter-terrorist financing. You can simplify that with a bunch of acronyms and your sentence is faster. The old school television was replaced by flat LCDs, OLEDs and plasma. Fine, same thing. So if you want to innovate in a process, business process, where you do KYC, AML and CTF, then you break it down and you work out that, actually knowing who the customer is all about proof of identity, proof of address, and anti-money laundering means that you need to look at what they're trying to do. And actually, the KYC, AML, CTF similarities are such that it's relatively easy to build a simple process which accidentally hits all 3 goals. So instead of having one business process for KYC, one business process for AML, one for CTF, if you break it down, you can innovate and have a really efficient process which really satisfies all the goals that you have. And the same is true about most jobs. You look at the underlying needs, and then based on those underlying needs, you create a new business process because things have changed. If you want to build a country where the country must have 0 income tax and free infrastructure, easy. You just redo the business model in such a way that you find a way of making money from where people live, how they travel from place to place, everything they consume, and even their rights. People can pay for their rights. So you could just go boom, 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 boom. I'm going to make money out of these things, and by doing those things, we can achieve 0 income tax and free infrastructure, just like here in Dubai. It's relatively easy to innovate if you just break it down and rebuild. So let's look at the current jobs. So you could be a doctor maybe, or maybe a teacher. Perhaps you're working in a shop. You operate a cinema. There are many different jobs that we can have today. These job categories have been created because of 2 things. One, the things we have. So in the past, we used to walk. I live in Dubai, people don't walk anymore. If you go to Miami, if you go to Los Angeles, as that we spoke about earlier, you don't walk anymore. No pavements, everyone drives a car. That's changed. We used to have typewriters with which we wrote letters to our auditors and our accountants. We used to write letters by hand. We used to have encyclopedias where if you're clever, you could find some information. And because of the those things, we had to go to a doctor in order to find out what's wrong with us. Now we can just do searches, clever searches, and we can find out information. We needed to go to a teacher in order to be taught. Many things were driven by those things. And now we're in the world of AI. There's so much we can do that we couldn't do before. That changes things. Our underlying needs of health, education, security, and so forth remain the same. But the way that we satisfy these needs can be different. Let me randomly pick one. Let's take teacher as one of the things in here. In the old days, teachers would do lesson planning. They would gather a number of students and instruct the students. Classroom management to make sure that people don't flick paper at each other all the time. Administration, some person did not turn up at school. Assessing performance, manually marking up what people have written. Provide feedback, communicate with parents, send letters to parents. Your child was not here at school today. Keeping up to date with the latest in their job roles, and maybe have time to give some advice, individual advice to some students, but typically not, because there's so much to be done. Now, today, schools can operate in a different way. Individual education planning can be done by a subject specialist. If you take a geography teacher, by way of example, a geography teacher can focus on geography and teach geography to an individual. Good. And have geography roadmaps where each student is coming at different speeds down this geography roadmap, engaging with students specifically in the geography-related things that the students need a hand with. Maybe some of the teaching is with online webinars, maybe it's in person, but the data analysis can be offloaded. The students fill in things using their laptops, and everything is analyzed automatically. The geography teacher now cooperates with the student to help the student get as good results as possible. And both the geography teacher and the student are graded by the student's performance by the data analysis specialist. The geography teacher does not need to be the data analyst specialist. In fact, it's better if the geography teacher focuses on geography, because all the different subjects need data analysis. So you might as well standardize that across the whole school. Online learning is something which is that cuts across all the different subjects. So learning about how to do online learning and the online skills that go with it, that can be taught separately, not by the geography teacher, but by people who are specialists at that, provide support. Mentoring is important, helping the child along or the student along. And social emotional coaching is super important, because when we go into this world where everything is online, we come into this world where 70% of children have been bullied online. That's 70% of children today, teenagers today, have been bullied online. So helping children cope with that, helping children cope with an educational environment which still is part of online, and therefore part of the environment where the child gets bullied, those emotional aspects are things that need to be taught, and probably not by the geography teacher, and probably not by the data analyst. It's a different type of coaching that's needed. So you have different new specialities that are coming along. Working together with others is key, but now we are learning our collaboration skills in an online environment. Again, that's not specific to geography. Geography is an example thereof. So the role of teacher explodes into a number of different roles, and the role of teacher, you can say that it disappears, but I don't feel that's true. I feel that the geography teacher can truly focus on being a geography teacher, as opposed to doing all the other things, such as classroom management, which are not needed anymore. So Efficiency comes as a result of this. We've all heard, I think, about Microsoft's Copilot for GitHub, which makes writing software much more efficient, maybe 5 times, maybe 10 times more efficient than before. Does that mean joblessness? We've heard about accountants getting lots of accountancy automated through these new technologies. Does that mean that accountants lose their job? Our values related to these things need to change, because if we have a reformation of the way that we work, then there will be some structural unemployment before people get redeployed into new roles. And the way that we perceive those people who temporarily are out of jobs, maybe even permanently out of jobs, or go into non-profit job roles, our values will need to move with that. It's not clear to me that artificial intelligence will cause mass unemployment. That's not clear to me at all, because if we go back in time, we had this debate in Japan in the 1960s when Japanese car manufacturers moved from largely hand-built cars to very automated built cars. And specifically, the areas where robotics are used the most are the areas today which have lowest unemployment. So it's not at all obvious that just because we automate things in a way that's never been done before, that automatically causes mass unemployment. That's not clear. We do not have examples from history that prove that to be the case. Where will it go? Well, in the short term, we're looking at automation, cutting out intermediaries and making things quicker. A bit later, we'll see true innovation, and we haven't really seen that from AI in the workplace yet, but that will come. And there's no finish line here. AI is not intelligent. It doesn't know if it's won. It doesn't know if there's a finish. It'll just push on and affect our lives more and more. Harvey is an example. Harvey is a product where a number of legal companies have brought together their legal know-how, all the old cases that they've done in the past, inside an OpenAI structure in order to give quicker legal advice. The companies that are using Harvey in order to make their legal advice faster are seeing that their customers want higher value in a shorter time, but they are not yet asking for lower invoices. They want higher value in shorter time. And those legal companies have not started making their lawyers unemployed. They're still being fully employed, but they're removing themselves. They're moving themselves over into new roles where they're using Harvey in their day-to-day jobs. So today, so far, the evidence says intensified work, but not a replacement. But we don't know what's going to come next. What we do know is that change is coming very quickly. How advanced is this? Well, in my role as CEO, I bring in new people, I bring in experienced people, we work with these people. Sometimes it makes sense to use someone experienced for a particular task. Sometimes it makes more sense to deploy someone who's relatively new on a particular task. And there's a little bit of judgment there. We need to work out which person goes where in order to get the job done. The picture on the right on this image, I ask you, if you have 2- and 3-year-olds, would you ask this person to drive your children to kindergarten or to school? I don't know. That's something where you would judge this person's maturity. In general, what I find with people and with AI today is that there are 4 boxes that you travel through. In the beginning, if I learn something new, and I would guess it's probably the same for you, learning something new, something brand new comes along, like learning to play the violin, and we think, yep, I can do that, and we're totally overly confident. We have no idea how difficult this is, so we're unaware of how inexperienced we are. Shortly afterwards, we realize, ow, if I'm going to do this, then I'm going to need to learn this and this and this in order to be successful. For me, in my role as CEO, that's fun. I like working with people who go through that, because once people have identified what they need to learn, we can then give them tasks where they learn those things so that they grow. As people grow, and I know this from myself, and I'm sure you'll recognize this from yourself as well, we all come into the most dangerous space. And in the most dangerous space, we believe we know it all. We can write a list. These 4 things are what you need. And regardless of what the problem is, we always come up with those 4 solutions, or whatever the number is. We are aware of our experience. We want a salary rise. We are overconfident. We know exactly what we can do. And we're dangerous, because if things are not within that scope, then we'll make quick and solid mistakes. Finally, we come into people who are very experienced, and we've all recognized this, and it's great fun. We run up to them and we say, hey, can you help me with this thing? And the response is, what is it that you actually want? What is it that you actually need? And we explain ourselves, and they say, okay, you're asking me for this, but actually, given what you're trying to do, you should be doing this. You should be doing something quite different. And typically, these people come up with solutions that hit our goals much more efficiently than we first thought, because the person we're talking to is, in fact, unaware of their level of experience, and their level of experience is much greater than ours. Where does AI fit into this? Well, to me, the different aspects of AI today are partly in box 1, 2, and 3, and mostly not in the box number 4. So most of what we have on the table right now is quite early. It's like having a super intelligent 15-year-old who helps you out. Now, that's useful, but it doesn't crack all the problems we have on the table right now. That's, to me, where this is right now. Should we jump into it? Definitely. I remember my first PC, an IBM PC, I think it was 1983. And I used to have a typewriter, writing things by hand and so forth. And suddenly I had this PC with a floppy disk and so forth. My friends sometimes ask me, why are you using a PC for that? Because you're just writing a letter, and actually it would be quicker for you to just drop a piece of paper in your typewriter, type it out, maybe use some Tipp-Ex, and there you go. And I still went for it. And looking back, I think that was a really good decision. Today, we all use PCs for practically everything we do. I think the same step is the step that we're looking at now with AI. AI is early, but it's a bit like going surfing. If you're surfing on the right side of the wave, you don't need to do much. You're just gliding along. If you're surfing and you're late, you have to paddle, paddle, paddle in order to stay with the same wave. So I think the lesson to us from that is get with it, start using AI, because AI is real. And if we're on the right side of the wave, then we can surf this, we can do this in different ways. And there's a big emotional thing. I think there's a melancholy aspect to this. I remember when I left my wonderful typewriter behind and went over to that PC, there's a beautiful item that I left. These ink pens that we used, beautiful ink pens, and now I hardly ever write anything. And practically everything I write is with my PC or with my phone. So there will be things we leave behind, and there's a melancholy question there about which shrapnels of the past we take with us, both physically and emotionally and behaviorally, and we move into this new world. Being with colleagues in an office and talking to colleagues, is that going to happen in the same way? I don't know. There will certainly be rooms where we used to have lots of laughter and fun, which we leave behind and we're not going to go back into again. So this is a change that's coming our way. And some of this change is questionable. There's a toy on the right here, and this product is from 2017. It's an online toy which can do some very basic, or could do some very basic things online. In 2023, we will have toys that are online with AI, where children will be able to have a reasonable conversation with the toy. Now that toy will, in 2023, be able to build a relationship with your children or your nephew's children without you really knowing about it. That toy will be able to introduce friends to your child. That toy will be able to have secrets. It will know if there are grown-ups in the room or if the toy is talking only to your child. I think we would want a health warning on toys like that. As parents, we would know if this toy will introduce friends to your child or to my child. We will want to know if it will keep secrets from the parents. And another aspect of AI is that the narrative control moves. If we go back a short period of time, like 200 years, then the narrative that we experienced was from family and friends. Those were the people we met. And the story that we experienced was all from family and friends. That moved. We all started going to school, and we would run home from school and said, teacher said this and teacher said that. Well, that means that the narrative control moved from the family to the school. It was a change. Then we had newspapers, books, and TV and radio. And I put the cross for goodbye at 2013, because in 2013, online media and social influencers overtook traditional media in their importance and frequency of use. So the narrative moved from school to newspapers to online media to social influencers. That's where we are now. What's happening in 2023 is that the narrative control is moving over to AI. And we saw it in the first part of this talk when I spoke about the values that are now being controlled by ChatGPT, Microsoft and Google Bard and others. The narrative control is moving to AI. So who is it that controls this? Who is it that generates ideas? Who is it that presents ideas? Who is it that presents which news article we will read next? Who is it that suggests our friends to ourselves? All of these things will shape us. That's a change. So there's risk here. There's risk in terms of children's toys. There's risk in terms of narrative control. And if you would have asked me 10 weeks ago whether this should be regulated, my answer was no, because I felt that what we should do is the same as with the internet and so forth. See how it goes, and then later on when we need to, we'll regulate. Don't regulate too early. Don't kill it too early. Well, I'm changing my mind on that point. If we look at the European General Data Protection Regulation, GDPR, then GDPR was introduced in 2016, maybe 20, 30 years after the internet really took off. And the big change that GDPR did was to move the ownership of your data, my data, from the companies that host that data to you and to me. So we own our data. And that little change of ownership then gives all of GDPR, meaning because it's my data or your data, we have a right to ask what data is being held. We have a right to delete what data is being held. Very simple legislation on the surface, and of course you need many pages to describe it, but brilliant legislation. That's been copied into a number of countries now, such as Japan and so forth. The list of countries that have not copied that legislation is much longer and much more scary. But GDPR, I think, set the tone for the type of regulation we should have for old school internet use. When it comes to AI, well, now we're trying to regulate something where potentially the effects are unknown. And like I said, 10 weeks ago, I thought, no, it's too early to regulate this. I've changed my mind. And the reasons I've changed my mind are partly the example I had with the children's toy, where I actually want a warning sign on there saying this will give friends to your child that you don't know about. This will keep secrets from you as a parent that between you and the child. I think there should be warning signs for that. That's me, that's my opinion. There's another example on the left here. The person in the middle is trying to buy a car and accidentally has two friends around her as she's doing that. To buy the car, she's borrowing money. The AI recognizes three faces, not one. The AI correctly recognizes that the person in the middle does not have enough money to buy this car, or take this loan, I should say, but clearly has two friends that are close friends. Look at the picture. Based on that, and based on these two rich friends, the AI concludes that, yeah, I will give this loan to this person because it makes sense to me. Maybe I get these other people as customers, and above all, the risk of default on the loan is low because this person will clearly get a little bit of financial help from friends if needed, instead of going bankrupt. Later on, the person in the middle might actually go bankrupt or default on the loan. And the AI will then learn that, the person on the left, the person on the right are not to be trusted, and therefore downgrade their financial status, because clearly they don't have the type of money or the type of respect for defaulting on a loan that I would expect. So, boom. Okay, but if you are that person on the left or on that person on the right, you might therefore suddenly see that your premiums have become more expensive. Why? Well, do you have a right to ask? Well, you have a right to ask, but there's no obligation to answer the question unless there's regulation. So to me, consent with regards to using faces, being allowed to move faces from app to app, being allowed to move the Microsoft graph or complete behaviors from app, to me, those should have consent. Now, for that consent to be true, we need regulation. So that's, again, one of the reasons why I feel, yes, there is reason to regulate some of these things. On the right here, we have a couple of games. Now, if you imagine that you and I would both be working for, say, Candy Crush, and someone used our game, Candy Crush, together with World of Warcraft and Call of Duty to generate a new game, and then use that new game to compete with us, then we would feel unhappy because our game was used in order to generate that new game. We should surely at least get some royalty on that. Definitely we should be allowed to ask, hey, did you use our game to make your game? So these are regulatory questions. Currently there is no regulation on this. The European Union is drafting something called the AI Act, and maybe that's going to be the first thing. And maybe it will be an irrelevance, because if countries without regulation outperform the countries which do have regulation, then the EU AI Act is irrelevant and should be deleted, because it doesn't do anything. So where will this go? I don't know. But I think the regulation of AI is a question which does deserve consideration now, contrary to what I thought 10 weeks ago. And on a personal level, okay, so where does this take us? Well, the different things we do in order to perform our job, like the teacher example, can be broken down into some things that we think are boring, and some things where we're not very good, and some things where we really do add value. So this comes back into our core competencies. So instead of doing some of everything, we will need now to think very hard about the core competencies that actually make up our contribution at work. We will need to evolve those core competencies. What is our magic? What is the magic that we actually contribute that is so valuable? Skip the things on the sides. We can use AI for the things on the side and focus on the areas where our magic really does add special value. Now, most of us, including myself, have worked at multiple companies in the past. If I look at all the CVs I get on my table all the time, which I'm delighted about, they all show having worked at one place, then another place, and then another place. So because of that, I have reason to believe, or we have reason to believe, that that will continue. So my role here as CEO of StarTrader will probably not continue until forever. And your role, where you're working right now, will probably not continue until forever. So we need to think hard about the exact magic that we provide, evolve that, nurture that, and work out how that can be transferable to a future role. And how can we communicate it? How can we communicate the hard skills and the hard know-how that we have today, and the soft skills and soft know-how that we have today? How can we communicate that to a future employer? LinkedIn profiles, how do we learn inside ourselves? All of these things. The way we evolve our core competencies needs to be rethought in light of AI biting off the things that we don't actually want, the things that we actually don't need. So, wow, things are changing in the meantime. Okay, rip into your ECN account, your standard account, your cent account, whichever you're interested in. Use AI to try to understand the world, understand the market. Choosing the exact products, in my opinion, is still best done by talking to dedicated account managers who can look hard at exactly where you are now as a trader, where you want to go, the type of result that you're looking for. Pick the products that are going to be right for you and monitor, follow up, and so forth. You'll find us in probably the city where there's a 5 out of 8 probability that we have an office in the city where you live right now. So pretty much regardless of the city in which you live, there will be local dedicated account managers there that you can meet up with, or at least talk to online. This is not easy. The world is not easy. Trading is never easy, but it's good fun. It's very exciting. So pick up a phone, pick up WhatsApp, pick up whatever you want, contact us. Let's get in touch. Let's do some great training together. Join us now. And together, let's enter this world of AI, and let's enter this world of new job position. Think about the geography teacher. It's very imaginable that the geography teachers of the future will be much happier than they are today, because they can focus on geography. They don't need to focus their minds on marking people's results. They don't need to focus their mind on teaching people how to use online tools. They don't need to focus their minds on data analytics of how quickly the students are progressing. They can get all that from people working together in a network. It's different. So I think the opportunities for us to do wonderful, interesting work have gone up. AI is the basis of future work. So let's rip into it. If you're not using ChatGPT yet, please do, or use Google Bard, or use Microsoft Bing. Use whichever tools you want, but do rip into it, because this is fun and it already has transformed the world. Thank you, and join us now.